I think really what needs to happen here is the left and the progressives pushing this need to drop the rhetoric that they care about fair taxes. They don't care about a fair tax.
They don't care about tax
They don't care about
equity.
the poor.
No.
They don't care about tax equity. If they did, they wouldn't be promoting 3 tax increases on the poor. What they really care about, and this is fine, we can have this disagreement, but the truth of the matter is what they really care about is growing government. For them, growing government and bringing more money into government coffers is an end in and of itself.
So number 1 in your heart, but number 116 on your ballot is a tax cut measure. It would reduce our state income tax from the 4.63% down a little bit to 4.55%. In all honesty, I really like this measure, and I helped get it on the ballot. We tried to get Carol Hedges from the Fiscal Policy Institute to join us for this discussion. She's adamantly against it. She refused to come on. So instead, the lovely and talented Ben Murrey from the Independence Institute, who runs our fiscal policy shop. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's go with the big thing in the room, that we can't afford a tax cut. Even this little tax cut, which is the same for everybody, the state simply can't afford it.
Don't I get to say something nice about the tax cut before we cut straight to the negative?
All right, go ahead and say something nice about it.
No, but that's right. That's what our opponents are saying. Look, this is a simple, flat tax cut. So anybody who pays the state income tax, which admittedly is not everybody, very low-income people for various reasons because of tax credits and deductions may not pay. But for anybody else, for working-class Coloradans all the way up to the top, this is an equal tax cut. So let's be clear about that at first.
Let me jump on that because I've been seeing the ads against it, and this is a tax cut for the rich. So it obviously is not an equal, fair tax cut. This is a tax cut for the wealthy. Plain and simple, I saw it on an ad. It must be true.
Well, not everything you see on an ad is true, and this would be a case where it's absolutely not, right? Well, I mean, look, let's be fair. I just said it, revealed our hand. If you make so little money, or you're in a tax situation where maybe you're a single mom with 3 kids, and you get the child tax credit and the EITC and all these things, you probably don't pay income tax, and you're right, this reduction won't reduce your taxes. I think there are other things we should do to help those people. I mean, we could reduce a lot of the regressive tax on our ballot. On our tax code. In fact, there are some on the ballot. We can talk about that later. But yes, this won't. But if you're a working class Coloradan who pays any taxes at all, you get the exact same rate cut that the wealthiest Coloradan gets. And what the opponents of this measure are saying when they say this is a tax cut for the rich is, if you're a working class Coloradan who pays any taxes at all, you are the wealthy and you don't deserve a tax cut.
That's a great way to put it, because I've heard a lot of, well, this is such a small tax cut. It's as if they want it both sides. It's going to destroy our state budget, and it's also such a small tax cut. And a regular guy might only make $40 a year off of this tax cut. That is to keep his own money, as if that's not worth it. You know, this is their money. $40 is still $40, and he gets the same percentage tax cut as anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. If somebody pays 100 times more in income taxes than I do, then they will see 100 times more savings from this tax cut. That's why we call it the real fair tax, as opposed to what our opponents would have liked to have seen, which is an imbalanced tax where people making a certain amount of money pay a much higher percentage, a much higher tax rate than others.
Why do we need this tax cut? I mean, why even bother? Does it help us?
It does, and an independent study by the Common Sense Institute came out a few weeks ago saying that this is going to create jobs, grow our economy, and it will help us recover from the recession. But the real genesis for this tax cut was with the tax cuts that were implemented at the federal level, the Trump tax cuts or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And very quickly what they did there is the feds broadened our tax base, making more of our income subject to tax, right? So if I make $60,000, but only $30,000 of that's taxable, well, maybe now $40,000 of that's taxable. Obviously, that means I'm going to have a higher tax bill. So what the feds did is they lowered tax rates to actually bring it down enough where even though more of my income is being taxed, the rate dropped so much that I have a lower federal tax bill. At the state level, we use the same federal taxable income to calculate our state income tax as the federal government does. But what the legislature here did is they said, well, thank you for the broader tax base. We're so glad that we can now subject more money to tax, but the rate's going to stay the same.
All right, so let me put it in my language, see if I'm following you. The tax cut on the federal level, I've just called the Trump tax code,
Sure.
saved us all and gave us all a tax cut on the federal level, and that we are paying less in aggregate on taxes. But since our tax base here in Colorado is taken off our federal state or our federal tax form, you take it over and you bring it over here, and then you multiply it by 4.63. Well, that base has grown. The feds lowered the rate, therefore it was a tax cut. The base has now grown in Colorado because of it, but the legislature keeps it at a high level. So we had a situation where, in order for this to be revenue neutral, Senator Sonnenberg introduced a bill to drop the tax rate to 4.5 for the sole purpose of making the Trump tax code not a Colorado state tax increase. And so what is the windfall that the state is getting because of the Trump tax code? At the federal level, we're paying less, but now we're paying a lot more on the state level. How much more?
Yeah, that's exactly right, John. According to analysis by the Legislative Council here in Colorado, it's about $5.2 billion over 10 years.
So $500 million a year more.
On average.
All right. So Coloradans are being taxed without a vote, without any permission, $500 million more a year. And this evil tax cut that you're pimping takes how much of that back to
It
folks?
claws back about $160 million a year of that $500 million a year that we've lost without our consent.
All right. So in other words, in order to make the Trump tax code not a tax increase up here, we really should have tripled this tax cut if we were going to do it right.
That's right. Even Sonnenberg's legislation wouldn't have quite paid for our tax increase from that law.
So this is what drives me crazy when I keep hearing, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. Fact is, we've paid for it over and over and over again because we're paying more in taxes, and that was a huge windfall. So amazing that the progressives in Colorado State Legislature, when the tax code changed on the federal level, we're all going like this because it's a tax increase locally that they didn't have to ask for. We want a little bit of that back.
That's right.
All right, let me throw the other part. I believe we've already paid for this because we're paying more in fees as well. The legislature has taxed us without our permission with fees. How much is that?
A lot. A lot. And it depends on how you look at it. There are fees.
I mean, it's billions of dollars a year between the hospital provider fee, the mill levy fees, the FASTER fee, reinsurance fee,
That's
growth
right.
dividend.
And legislation that was passed this legislative session, just from two bills alone, we have about a $170 million increase in funds coming into the government from taxpayers in the 2020 legislative session.
Say that again, because this is really important.
Two bills alone, House Bill 1420 and Senate Bill 215, would generate about $170 million of new money coming into to the state government over the previous year.
And our tax cut doesn't even get to that level.
That's right.
So our tax cut has not only been paid for by tax increases they did this year, by changing some tax code, by the Trump tax code, and billions of dollars in fees that we never got to vote for.
That's exactly right. I mean, look at the hospital provider fee. That's bringing in about $900 million a year. That's something that was passed by the legislature. It
Never
is
went to a
passed
vote.
on to us.
It never
We
went to a vote.
ultimately pay
People
for
need to
that.
know that it didn't go to a vote because the Colorado Supreme Court says the legislature can raise taxes without going to the people if they call it a fee. So every state that does this thing to get more federal money in, they do this hospital bed tax, and they all call it a tax. Only one state calls it a fee, and that's us, for the sole purpose of getting around consent of taxpayers.
That's right. And we could do this all day long. I mean, the opponents of this measure always say we can't afford things. They always threaten the things that we all believe that the state should do, like take care of basic infrastructure and provide for public education and these sorts of things. And they always threaten those things. But they never say, well, gee, I don't think our schools are performing quite the way they should with the money that's been allocated to them. What can we do to make these dollars go a little further? What can we do to improve the education that our citizens are receiving without raising taxes? Nobody asks that question. The answer is immediately, well, we need more money. We need more money. We need more money. Well, what have you done with the money we've given you?
Most of it goes in education to administrators, not to the classroom. The other part is, I always find, they call it the Washington Monument Gamut, which is, when they say this tax cut, it means your kids will not get an education. We're going to have to cut the education budget. I'm thinking, well, wait a second. Before you cut anything else, you're going to cut that. You're not going to cut the massive tax credits for rich white guys to buy Teslas, or the movie credits, which gave $3 million to guys like Quentin Tarantino. Those things are off the level. That
I actually think they did end up reducing that one because they needed a little extra revenue, but they haven't gotten rid of the electric vehicle tax credit. I mean, that goes way disproportionately to the wealthy in this state.
By a state study, it also goes to white people. When you look at where it was done, there were predominantly rich white areas of Colorado that are buying Teslas. They'd rather cut education before they cut that.
I think it's so interesting. Proposition 116 is very short and simple. It just says, something to the effect of, shall the Colorado tax code be
reduced from this to that.
Exactly. And that's it, one sentence. And opponents of the measure always talk about how we're going to have to cut education and roads and all these programs that we all agree should exist. And the measure doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that's going to happen. So all I can interpret what they're saying as is that that's their policy recommendation. So the Bell Policy Center, one of the progressive think tanks here, Scott Wasserman, their president, always like to say, "Oh, we're going to cut roads and we're going to cut schools if this passes." Well, Proposition 116 doesn't say that. So is that your official policy recommendation as the president of a think tank? Because we don't think that should happen.
There's also an economic driver that happens. We tend to think of taxes as a stagnant thing. They're actually very dynamic. When you lower taxes, it helps spur economic development, and you often get more revenue because of that. It's one of the reasons why the governor supports this tax cut. He ran on a position of closing loopholes in the tax code and reducing the tax. Now, he has closed some of those loopholes. You mentioned a couple of the bills that he signed, but the legislature would not offer him a tax cut. So we did. We're just trying to make the governor's campaign promises come true. All right, I want to get on to the issue of progressive taxes. I know that the left very much wants a progressive income tax system where we can soak those rich bastards and get more money out of them. But you did some interesting research that out of all the things that we pay in taxes, and we're talking about property taxes and gas taxes and cigarette taxes and booze taxes, only one thing in Colorado is actually a progressive income tax. It's our flat tax. Explain how that is.
Yeah, that's right. So what the other side wants ultimately is a graduated income tax that's progressive. We have a flat tax that's progressive, and the reason for that is that not all income, we talked about this a moment ago, not all income is subject to tax. And generally what it is people on the lower end of the income spectrum have deductions and credits that are a much larger percentage of their income than somebody at the higher end. And people at the higher end of the income spectrum also have certain deductions and credits. But generally what you see is that as a percentage of income, so if I make $30,000 a year, my deduction and credits are maybe 100% of my income. It's all of my income. So I apply the flat tax rate to $0. I have no taxable income. Whereas if I make $1 million, I might be applying the 4.63% tax rate to $900,000 or $950,000. And so effectively, your tax rate's much higher if as you make more money, and much lower down to even zero if you make less money.
So there is a progressive tax. It is our flat tax rate. People at the upper end pay effectively much more than people on the lower end.
That's right.
All right. Here's what I find so very ugly and bigoted about what's going on the ballot this year. There are 4 tax measures. Our tax cut, a tobacco tax increase, a property tax increase, which is repealing Gallagher, and a payroll tax, which is the Prop 118 for family leave. All 3, other than ours, all 3 others hurt working people so much more. And I'm trying to understand how the progressives somehow try to grab the moral high ground and constantly say, we're doing this for the poor, we're doing this for the poor, we're doing this for the poor, when the opponents of our tax cut support all three of these poor-hating initiatives. Each one of these hits people at the lower income scale by a lot more. You've done a little digging on this.
Yeah, and so those are called regressive taxes is what they are. Every kind of tax in Colorado except the income taxes is generally regressive. But yet, as you pointed out, the people opposing our tax cut support three different increases of regressive taxes that hurt lower income people more and hurt you less as you make more money. It's interesting, and I think really what needs to happen here is the left and the progressives pushing this need to drop the rhetoric that they care about fair taxes. They don't care about a fair tax.
They don't care about tax
They don't care about
equity.
the poor. They don't care about tax equity. If they did, they wouldn't be promoting 3 tax increases on the poor. What they really care about, and this is fine, we can have this disagreement, but the truth of the matter is what they really care about is growing government. For them, growing government and bringing more money into government coffers is an end in and of itself. You see, for people like me, I believe that government should exist. It has a role to play. It's important, and it should be efficient and do its job really well. Really the end goal is that we're all better off, that we're all more prosperous. And so we should look at how to get there. The other side, it's an end in and of itself that government is just bigger. And it's because we have a real philosophical disagreement here, and that is people like me believe what I just said, but also we believe that you're probably going to be better off if you get to spend more of your money the way you think is best for your family and for your community. And we should have more government at the local level, meaning, number one, me making decisions for myself as an individual, but then the next thing should be maybe my community does things, so I pay local taxes, and then it should go up from there. Whereas the left really does believe in what I call trickle-down government. They want to send as much money as possible from you, the individual, up to the highest level of government possible. The federal government, if that's not, if we can't send some money to the federal government because they don't have the power to do something, maybe we do it to the state. And it's like, and then what they believe is that as that money trickles down and siphons off into the pockets of bureaucrats and administration and different government waste and this and that, somehow you're going to get more value out of it when it finally trickles back down to you than if you had just spent it the way you saw fit for yourself. We've
only got a minute or so here, but I look at these tax increases on the poor, these attacks on the poor that the left is pushing. The cigarette tax, according to the state government, is 51 times more hurtful to a person on the lower end of the scale than somebody making over $200,000. Not 51% more, 51 times more.
Yeah.
But they care about the poor. The property taxes, and the Gallagher group of people do that. I believe it's, is it 4 to 8, I forget, times higher for people in the poorer sector. Mind you, they're paying it in their rent. And a payroll tax, well, if you're making your money off of investments, you're not paying any payroll tax. And 118,
rental properties.
Yeah, rental properties. So 118 is about hurting poor people.
It's about hurting the working class.
I want to make sure we categorize this and we chronicle it, because next year or the year after, or whenever they try to do it, they're going to try to say we need to help the poor with tax fairness. And they have no moral ground to stand on to say that they care about taxing the poor less.
The real argument is, first of all, we're the ones who care more about equity in the tax code. But the real argument is the government doing such a damn good job that they need to get a whole lot more of your money? Or do we need to say, you know what, government, you need to be like any of the rest of us, every single household in this state, where we have to make hard decisions and do the best we can and be responsible with the money that's been allocated to us.
Incredible. Hey, if you want to check out Ben's work, go to independenceinstitute.org. That's thinkfreedom.org, which is a little bit better. Read me in the Denver Gazette. Go to denvergazette.com. Grab a subscription, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button, too. You don't want to miss a single show.